My wife and I have been in somewhat of a dead bedroom situation for the past few years, maybe once per month if we're lucky. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, we have 4 kids, and I work full-time in a busy profession. When we first got married, we were both very much on the same page in terms of intimacy, and our intimacy life was frequent, 3, 5 times or more per week, and amazing. We would both initiate as opposed to predominantly being one of us, too. Now, if I don't initiate, it literally never happens. Yet I get turned down all the time because my wife isn't in the mood, even if I'm extra flirty that day and drop hints, touch her throughout the day, etc., to try and build anticipation for it. Things took a turn for the worse earlier this year. I got a vasectomy, and to make a long story short, my wife and I had talked about doing this for years, but my wife had regrets after I had the procedure and now says she can't imagine having intimacy again because she is grieving. I want to respect her space, but why would she need to grieve that I got a vasectomy that we both agreed to? Not that she needed to agree since it's my body. It feels like she already didn't want to have intimacy and is now using this as a convenient excuse to have a more legitimate reason for turning me down. It's been a few months, and she still won't have intimacy with me. And I'm getting to the point where I'm wondering whether it's worth ending our marriage because of this. My wife refuses to do therapy or couples counseling because she's not comfortable opening up to people, which is extremely disappointing because I think we would benefit greatly from that. And I think we at least owe our kids that before potentially calling it quits on our marriage. Intimacy is very important to me, and I just can't live without it anymore. I keep myself in great shape, especially considering how much I work, and have always done so to make myself as attractive as possible for my wife. And more importantly, I try to make her happy and give her attention. But that effort isn't reciprocated at all, and the desire for intimacy isn't reciprocated either. I don't want to cheat, since what kind of a role model would I be for our kids if I did that? Plus, I morally disagree with it. Am I in the wrong or crazy for potentially wanting to call it quits? Is this a legitimate reason? It would be a messy divorce, but I get the sense that I deserve better than this, and I'm sick of slaving away while my wife stays home with the kids and getting absolutely nothing out of our relationship in terms of intimacy. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Intimacy issues can sometimes be resolved. I refuse to do any work on this relationship. Even super basic things like trying couples therapy cannot be resolved. I will note, though, that being a stay-at-home mom to 4 kids is also difficult work. You seem to have the idea that you're working hard while she's just chilling at home. Being a full-time parent is demanding, and it is very common for stay-at-home parents, especially of multiple young children, to be totally touched out and physically depleted by the end of the day, and to feel burned out on anything that involves giving any more of their physical body to others. Even if your demanding job does not allow you to take on more parenting tasks, it might be worth it to talk about taking tasks off her plate. Hire cleaners, use a laundry service, hire sitters more frequently, etc. If her domestic burden is reduced, she might slowly reclaim her body and time enough to be interested in intimacy again. Not saying this in a just hire out domestic services in exchange for more intimacy way, but in a, it sounds like your wife has spent most of the last 12 years either pregnant, immediately postpartum, caring for a newborn, caring for a toddler, or some combination of the above. So it may be understandable if she feels exhausted and depleted, and extra help might help with that way. Comment 2. Full-time parenthood and full-time work are a recipe for a dead bedroom. You don't mention how you help each other alleviate the stress of day-to-day life. 4 kids is a lot, usually resulting in privacy being completely a thing of the past, domestic squabbles, weight gain, and other health issues, and you basically just expect your wife to magically overcome all that and become weightless and baggage-free in bed. Not gonna happen. This happens to every marriage, and it's your unique challenge to overcome it, together. In other words, your tried and true claim to having done everything you can to remain attractive is as cliche as it is selfish and self-centered. What have you done together to get past this? What have you done to help her? Marriage is not a one-lane highway. You talk about me, but not an ounce of concern for her. You expect all the progress to be done single-handedly, individually. Oh well, divorce, remarry, repeat. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me. A lot has happened since my last post. 2 weeks ago, I decided to take a different approach. I thought maybe if I took on more of the household responsibilities, It might help my wife feel less stressed and more open to intimacy. So I started doing more around the house, cooking, cleaning, helping the kids with their homework, and even taking them to their extracurricular activities. I hoped that by lightening her load, she might feel more relaxed and maybe even more affectionate. At first, it seemed to be working. She seemed happier and even thanked me a few times for helping out. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, I found a journal she had been keeping. I know I shouldn't have read it, but curiosity got the better of me. In it, she wrote about feeling overwhelmed and unappreciated, but what really caught my eye was a passage about her feeling disconnected from me emotionally. She mentioned that the vasectomy wasn't the real issue. It was just a trigger for deeper feelings of loss and disconnection that had been building up for years. Reading that was a punch to the gut. I realized I had been so focused on the physical aspect of our relationship that I had completely missed the emotional side. I decided to confront her about it, but I wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't make her feel attacked. So I waited until the kids were in bed and we were both relaxed. I told her I had found her journal and read some of it. She was understandably upset at first, but then she broke down and admitted that she had been feeling this way for a long time. She said that the vasectomy was just the tipping point, and that she felt like we had lost the emotional connection we once had. She also admitted that she had been avoiding therapy because she was scared of what might come out during the sessions. This was a huge revelation for me. I had been so focused on the physical aspect of our relationship that I had completely neglected the emotional side. I apologized for not being more attentive to her feelings and for not realizing sooner how much she was struggling. We talked for hours that night, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were really connecting. But then, I made a mistake that changed everything. In my eagerness to fix things, I suggested that we should start having intimacy again to rebuild our connection. She looked at me like I had just slapped her. She said that I still didn't get it, that it wasn't about the intimacy, but about the emotional intimacy that we had lost. She felt like I was still only thinking about my needs and not hers. That conversation set us back even further. She became more distant, and I felt like I had blown my chance to make things right. I tried to give her space, but it was hard not to feel rejected and frustrated. I started to wonder if maybe we were just too far gone to fix things. A few days later, I decided to take the kids out for the day to give her some alone time. When we got back, she was gone. She left a note saying that she needed some time to think and that she was staying with her sister for a while. I was devastated. I felt like I had failed as a husband and a father. The kids were confused and kept asking where their mom was. I didn't know what to tell them, so I just said that she needed a break and would be back soon. I tried to keep things as normal as possible for them, but it was hard. I missed her, and I was worried about what this meant for our marriage. During this time, I did a lot of soul searching. I realized that I had been so focused on my own needs and frustrations that I had completely neglected hers. I thought about all the times I had dismissed her feelings or failed to notice when she was struggling. I realized that I had been a pretty lousy partner and that if I wanted to save our marriage, I needed to make some serious changes. I reached out to her sister and asked if she could help facilitate a conversation between us. She agreed, and we met at her house a few days later. It was awkward at first, but eventually we started talking. I apologized for my mistakes and told her that I was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. She was hesitant at first, but eventually she agreed to give it another try. We decided to start with small steps. We began by spending more time together without the kids, just talking and reconnecting. We also started going to therapy, both individually and as a couple. It was hard at first, but it helped us understand each other better and work through our issues. One of the things that came up in therapy was my wife's past. She revealed that she had experienced a lot of emotional neglect growing up, which made it hard for her to open up and trust people. This was a huge revelation for me and helped me understand why she had been so resistant to therapy and why she had been struggling so much with our relationship. As we continued to work on our issues, I started to see changes in both of us. We were more open and honest with each other, and we started to rebuild the emotional connection that we had lost. It wasn't easy, and there were still a lot of ups and downs, but we were making progress. One night, after a particularly intense therapy session, we had a breakthrough. My wife admitted that she had been using the vasectomy as an excuse to avoid dealing with her deeper issues. She said that she was scared of losing me and that she wanted to work on our relationship. This was a huge turning point for us, and it felt like we were finally on the same page. Since then, things have been slowly getting better. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're both committed to making our marriage work. We're learning to communicate better and to be more attentive to each other's needs. It's a long road, but we're walking it together. Thanks for reading. Aita for leaving my husband. After he put his job before our unborn baby, I'm 7 months pregnant. I've had a consistent problem throughout that I don't feel he's concerned enough for the baby. When I bring up that I'm concerned, he will just say he's sure it will be okay. On Thursday, I had some weird pain in my abdomen and called my OB. I started to feel better, so I didn't go. Last night, Saturday, I started to feel the same pain, but it came on really suddenly and hurt bad. I told my husband. He asked if we should go to the emergency room. I looked it up. It said that sudden abdominal pain is a pregnancy warning symptom, and I should go in. I said yes, I'd rather be safe. Husband told me he lied to me this morning. I walked up to our bedroom after falling asleep and saw him awake 30 minutes early. He said he just woke up and couldn't fall back asleep, when in reality he had been up all night because he couldn't sleep and lied to me so he could take my car to work anyway. We're sharing my car right now, and he knows I wouldn't have let him drive. He said this had to be happening right now and was a punishment for lying. He debated over whether we should go, said he'd be up for 36 hours with no sleep, and said he was between a rock and a hard place regarding calling off his job. I told him he could stay home. I meant it because I could already tell he was stressing about work sleep, and I didn't want any extra stress. He insisted. He continued stressing in the car about sleep, calling off his job. He was a job where he gets attendance points before getting in trouble, and he has 0 points. He missed a week last week due to illness. I think he was concerned he'd look bad to his managers. They still have to follow the point policy, and his absence last week was excused. I asked him to stop and told him I couldn't handle any extra stress. He said, sorry. 5 minutes later, he said, I don't know what I will do if I lose my job. I got very angry, screamed at him, I can't handle any more stress. He told me to stop and that I was hurting our baby. He continued on about how we will be tight this week. I told him we had next to no bills right now, and he said he has $1,800 worth of debt to pay off, which I knew about, but was obviously not my priority at the moment. At no point did he ask me if I was okay or talk to about our son. We think baby is okay. My husband tried to apologize in the hospital. I just don't care. I needed support, and he was more anxious about his job than a possible miscarriage, about his bills than whether I was okay. I feel so betrayed and angry with him that I haven't spoken to him today. I have no idea how we can move forward from this. I'm trying to be reasonable because I know that as the provider for our family and with our new home being almost ready to move into, we have a house trailer and are waiting on inspections, etc. to move in. He is under a lot of pressure. However, I'm just so shocked by his reaction last night and that he chose to be concerned about his job above our baby and me. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It kind of sounds like he might be more stressed about the baby than he seems. Sometimes anxiety can manifest in strange ways, especially when you don't have much practice in recognizing anxiety and good coping skills. It almost sounds like the baby stress triggered him to freak out about his job, if that makes sense. Like almost a distraction in a way. Regardless, it totally sucks because you need and want his support. If he is open to it, I would bet money talking to a third-party, counselor, or therapist might help him manage his own stress in order to be a better partner and support system to you and baby. During times of high stress, it can be difficult to look at the big picture because it gives you tunnel vision. If he seems genuinely sorry, he probably is. He just also sounds like he needs support too. And there's no reason you both wouldn't benefit from additional support outside of each other, at least at the moment. A lot of big changes, new home, new baby. It makes sense to be extremely anxious about all of it, including affording it. Comment 2. My husband was like this almost every single OB appointment. It got so bad the nurses could tell if he'd driven me in by my blood pressure, which was always perfect prior. My last pregnancy, he got so stressed he threatened divorce when I was 8 months pregnant because he wanted to set up work meetings for hours after my scheduled C-section and the next day, and I had enough. Honestly, I have no advice, but know you're not alone. My husband is a decent man, does the parenting thing, tries to better himself, remembers all holidays, and knows how to clean. But as soon as his anxiety kicks in, he's about as supportive as a dirty sponge. Unfortunately, He was raised that the only acceptable emotion for men is anger, so he's come a long way. But I'm still wondering, 12 months in, what I'm doing with someone that adds so much tension to my life. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. After the hospital visit, I decided to stay with my mom for a few days to clear my head. I needed some space to think about everything that had happened. My husband didn't take it well. He kept texting and calling, apologizing and saying he didn't mean to stress me out, but I just couldn't deal with him at that moment. I needed to focus on myself and the baby. On Friday, I had another appointment with my OB. My mom came with me since my husband was at work. The doctor said everything looked fine, but I should avoid stress as much as possible. Easier said than done, right? My mom was really supportive, and it felt good to have someone who was genuinely concerned about me and the baby. That night, my husband showed up at my mom's house, unannounced. He was visibly tired and looked like he hadn't slept in days. He begged me to come home, saying he couldn't handle being alone and that he was sorry for everything. I told him I needed more time, but he insisted that we needed to talk. Reluctantly, I agreed. We sat down in my mom's living room and he started talking about how he felt trapped between his job and his responsibilities at home. He said he was scared of losing his job because it was the only thing keeping us afloat financially. He admitted that he had been lying about small things because he didn't want to worry me. He thought he was protecting me, but it only made things worse. I told him how hurt and betrayed I felt. I needed him to be there for me, not just physically, but emotionally. I needed him to care about our baby as much as I did. He promised to do better, but I wasn't sure if I could believe him. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's hard to rebuild. The next day I went back home, but things were still tense between us. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was mostly about mundane things like groceries and bills. I could tell he was trying, but the damage had been done. I felt like I was living with a stranger. On Sunday, we had a huge argument. He was supposed to take care of some paperwork for the new house, but he forgot. When I reminded him, he snapped at me, saying he had too much on his plate and couldn't handle everything. I lost it. I told him that I was the one who was pregnant and dealing with all the physical and emotional stress, and the least he could do was handle the paperwork. He stormed out of the house, and I didn't hear from him for hours. When he finally came back, he looked defeated. He said he had gone to a bar to clear his head, but ended up just feeling worse. He admitted that he didn't know how to handle the pressure, and that he felt like he was failing as a husband and soon-to-be father. I realized then that he was struggling with his own issues, but it didn't excuse his behavior. We needed to find a way to support each other, or this was never going to work. I suggested we see a counselor, and surprisingly, he agreed. Maybe talking to a professional could help us sort through our problems. On Monday, we had our first counseling session. It was awkward at first, but the therapist was really good at making us feel comfortable. We talked about our fears and anxieties, and it was eye-opening to hear his perspective. He felt like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders and didn't know how to ask for help. I realized that I had been so focused on my own needs that I hadn't considered his. But then, something unexpected happened. During the session, the therapist asked us to talk about our pasts and how they shaped our current behavior. My husband revealed that his father had been very strict and demanding, always expecting him to be perfect. He grew up feeling like he could never measure up, and that fear of failure had followed him into adulthood. It was a revelation that made a lot of sense, but it also made me sad. I didn't want our child to grow up feeling the same way. After the session, we talked more openly than we had in months. It felt like we were finally making progress. But just when I thought things were getting better, I got a call from my OB. They had found something concerning in my latest test results and wanted me to come in for further tests. My heart sank. I didn't know how much more stress I could handle. We went to the appointment together, and the doctor explained that there was a risk of preterm labor. They wanted to monitor me closely and advised me to take it easy. My husband was visibly shaken, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He held my hand and promised to be there for me and the baby, no matter what. But as the days went by, his old habits started creeping back. He became distant again, more focused on work and his own stress than on me. I felt like we were stuck in a never-ending cycle of hope and disappointment. I didn't know how much longer I could keep doing this. In the end, I realized that some things might never change. People have their own demons to fight, and sometimes love isn't enough to conquer them. I still love my husband, but I have to think about what's best for me and our baby. Maybe time will heal our wounds, or maybe it won't. Only time will tell. Thanks for reading. Aita, for telling my boyfriend to cut off his flirty ex-girlfriend. My boyfriend, 27-year-old male, of 6 months, is good friends with his ex-girlfriend, 26-year-old female, of 4 years. I admit that since the beginning I wasn't thrilled by the idea of it, but I respect their friendship and try to feel as neutral about it as possible. We have met up a few times on double dates or for her birthday. I get along well with her boyfriend. However, I get a strange vibe from her sometimes towards my boyfriend, her ex. But never mind it, I'm still polite and friendly. My boyfriend has always told me that he wants to be transparent and open with me about their friendship. He knows it makes me anxious at times. So, to not let me stress, he gave me his passcode and said I could always look at their texts if I feel I need to be reassured. I haven't done it once. Recently, my boyfriend and I were talking, and the topic of his ex came up. I said to him, "Hey, it's been a while. Could I look at your texts? Because I've recently felt some anxiety." He never really shares what they talk about, but I think it's because he knows she's a sensitive topic. He said sure and unlocked his phone. While scrolling, a picture pops up that she sent to him 3 weeks ago. She took a photo from above. Imagine the camera as your face, looking down at your body, half showing her sitting on a chair, jogging pants down to her knees in her underwear. She sent this to show a bruise she has on her upper thigh. To me, this photo is inappropriate and weird. She's sitting there in her underwear. And out of all the people she sent it was to her ex-boyfriend. There are many ways to take a picture of a bruise, by the way. It was tiny. But she specifically stripped her pants down to take a picture. My boyfriend said it was weird, but replied to it and ignored the nature of the photo. He never asked for it. But he also didn't tell her, "Hey, don't send me these kinds of photos." He tells me it probably wasn't her intention to send anything purposefully provocative, but to me it's still weird and uncomfortable because it's his ex. It feels like a disregard for the other's partner, and that she just feels too comfortable due to their prior relationship. I wouldn't want my boyfriend to send something like that to someone, let alone his ex. And he said he wouldn't want me sending something like that. His reasoning being that she's socially unaware of what's normal boundaries. We said we would talk about what to do if we talked to her, and what his response would be next time. I can't help but feel so disappointed about the situation. How to move forward in a scenario like this together? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. There are a few things that you could do. Tell him to get his head out of his butt and to see that this is not okay, and then offer him to send a similar picture to her boyfriend. See how they all like that. That shouldn't even be a discussion. Just leave and find a relationship where you don't have anxiety in the honeymoon phase. He needs to set boundaries and ask himself if she is really that important, because no smart women would accept that kind of shoot. Listen to your gut. I am nearly 40, and I learned that my gut is there for a reason. Comment 2. I'm not understanding the need to be in contact with her if she's an ex. That's why you're feeling the anxiety, because they still have a connection. He let you see the texts, but didn't tell you when she did it. I don't know, I don't like it, and you clearly don't either, hence why you're making this post. I'm not a woman who gives ultimatums, but I always express what I do not like. And if that man continues to do said thing I don't like, I'm out of there. Just something to think about. Now, for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So, after that whole incident with the photo, things have been a bit tense between my boyfriend and me. We decided to have a serious conversation about boundaries and what we both feel is appropriate when it comes to interactions with exes. He agreed that the photo was inappropriate and promised to set clearer boundaries with her. He even suggested that we could talk to her together to make sure she understands our perspective. A few days later, we met up with her and her boyfriend for dinner. It was awkward at first, but we managed to bring up the topic. My boyfriend explained that while he values their friendship, there need to be boundaries that respect our relationship. She seemed taken aback and a bit defensive at first, but eventually she apologized and said she didn't realize the photo would be taken that way. Her boyfriend also chimed in, saying he understood where we were coming from, and that they would both be more mindful in the future. After that dinner, things seemed to settle down a bit. My boyfriend and I felt like we had made some progress and were on the same page. However, about a week later, I noticed he was acting a bit distant. He wasn't as open or affectionate as he usually is, and it felt like there was something on his mind. I asked him about it, and he said he was just stressed with work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. One evening, I decided to check his phone again. I know it might sound like I was being paranoid, but I just had this nagging feeling. When I looked through his messages, I found out that his ex had been texting him more frequently, even after our conversation. She wasn't sending any inappropriate photos, but the messages were still a bit too flirty for my comfort. She would send him inside jokes and talk about memories from when they were together. My boyfriend didn't seem to be encouraging it, but he also wasn't shutting it down. I confronted him about it, and he admitted that he didn't want to hurt her feelings by being too harsh. He said he thought she was just being friendly and didn't want to make things awkward. I told him that while I understand his perspective, it's important for him to prioritize our relationship and make sure I'm comfortable. He agreed and promised to talk to her again, this time being more firm about the boundaries. The next day, he called her and had a long conversation. He told her that while he values their friendship, he needs to set some boundaries to respect our relationship. She seemed to understand and apologized again. After that, their communication became less frequent, and my boyfriend seemed more present and attentive. However, about a week later, something unexpected happened. My boyfriend's ex showed up at our apartment unannounced. She was visibly upset and said she needed to talk to him. I was taken aback and didn't know what to do. My boyfriend invited her in, and they went to the living room to talk. I could hear bits and pieces of their conversation, and it sounded like she was going through a tough time and needed someone to talk to. After she left, my boyfriend explained that she was dealing with some personal issues and didn't have anyone else to turn to. He said he felt bad for her and wanted to be there for her as a friend. I understood his compassion, but I couldn't help but feel uneasy about the whole situation. It felt like no matter how many boundaries we set, she always found a way to cross them. A few days later, my boyfriend and I had another serious conversation. I told him that while I understand his desire to help his friend, it's important for us to have clear boundaries to protect our relationship. He agreed and said he would try to find a balance between being there for her and respecting our relationship. As we were talking, he opened up about something that I didn't expect. He admitted that part of the reason he was so hesitant to set firm boundaries with her was because he still felt guilty about their breakup. He said he ended things with her because he felt they had grown apart, but he always felt like he let her down. He said he didn't want to hurt her again and felt responsible for her well-being. This revelation was a bit of a shock to me. It made me realize that his reluctance to set boundaries wasn't just about being nice. It was also about unresolved feelings of guilt and responsibility. I told him that while I understand his feelings, it's important for him to prioritize our relationship and not let his guilt dictate his actions. We decided to seek couples therapy to help us navigate this complicated situation. We found a therapist who specializes in relationship issues and started attending sessions together. The therapy sessions have been helpful in providing us with tools to communicate better and set healthy boundaries. In one of the sessions, the therapist suggested that my boyfriend write a letter to his ex, expressing his feelings of guilt and responsibility, and then share it with me. This exercise was meant to help him process his emotions and also to be transparent with me about his feelings. He wrote the letter and shared it with me, and it was a very emotional experience for both of us. It helped me understand his perspective better and also helped him let go of some of the guilt he was carrying. Since then, things have been improving. My boyfriend has been more attentive and open with me, and we've been working on building a stronger foundation for our relationship. His ex has also been more respectful of our boundaries, and their communication has become more appropriate. Thank you for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!